Did the 1960s make better science fiction than Hollywood does today? It sounds controversial, but look at the evidence. Without digital effects, superhero universes, or enormous franchise budgets, filmmakers created artificial intelligence, ruined futures, alien worlds, climate disasters, and terrifying new societies. These movies did not simply guess what tomorrow might look like. They questioned whether humanity deserved to reach it. Before we begin, like this video, share it with another classic movie fan, and subscribe to our channel. Number 37. The Green Slime, 1968. A successful mission becomes a nightmare because of one tiny mistake. An asteroid is racing toward Earth, and an international team of astronauts is sent to destroy it. They complete the dangerous assignment, but a small amount of green material sticks to one astronaut's equipment and returns with him to a crowded space station. That material quickly grows into aggressive one-eyed creatures. Even worse, the fluid released from their bodies produces more of them, meaning every attempt to fight back increases the danger. Soon, the station's hallways are filled with flashing electrical tentacles, frightened crew members, and increasingly desperate attempts to stop the creatures from reaching Earth. Its most famous sequence arrives when the astronauts realize that ordinary weapons are making the invasion worse. The creatures move through the station while electrical energy bursts around them, turning a clean scientific facility into a chaotic trap. The effects are proudly old-fashioned, but the film moves with enough speed to prevent viewers from examining them too closely. The energetic music, bright colors, elaborate models, and serious performances create a memorable combination of space opera and creature horror. The story also contains an idea that later became central to many science fiction films. Humans survive one enormous danger, only to carry a new one home. The green slime is loud, strange, and sometimes unintentionally funny, but it remains an enjoyable bridge between 1950s monster movies and the trapped-in-space thrillers that followed. Enjoying the countdown so far? Subscribe to the channel, share this video, and tell us your favorite 60s science fiction movie below. Now prepare yourself, because the films are about to become much darker, smarter, and considerably stranger. Number 36. Queen of Blood, 1966. Beauty becomes more frightening than any obvious monster in this atmospheric space thriller. After an alien spacecraft crashes near Mars, astronauts from Earth launch a rescue mission. They discover a silent green-skinned survivor and bring her aboard, believing they have made peaceful contact with intelligent life. The mysterious passenger appears calm and physically weak, but her behavior changes whenever the crew members sleep. One astronaut is found without any clear explanation for what happened, and suspicion spreads through the spacecraft. The alien woman does not communicate through ordinary speech, yet her expression makes it clear that she understands far more than she reveals. One of the movie's most memorable scenes takes place around the dinner table. The visitor watches the astronauts with cold fascination while they slowly realize that someone aboard is in danger. Nothing dramatic happens immediately, but the silence turns the entire room into a threat. Director Curtis Harrington creates an eerie mood through colored lighting, unusual electronic sounds, and long stretches with very little dialogue. Some of the space footage was borrowed from earlier Soviet productions, but the new material transforms it into something dreamlike. The central idea is simple. Something beautiful, injured, and apparently helpless may still be dangerous. That theme gives the film more power than its modest production might suggest. Queen of Blood also anticipated later stories about astronauts unknowingly transporting hostile life through space. Its effects may be dated, but its silence, atmosphere, and mysterious central figure remain wonderfully unsettling. Number 35. The Creation of the Humanoids, 1962. Long before artificial intelligence became an everyday subject, this unusual film asked whether a manufactured person could possess a genuine soul. The world has survived a devastating conflict, and the remaining human population depends heavily on robots known as clickers. These machines perform essential work, but a hostile political organization believes they are becoming too independent. The story follows a human officer who supports strict limits on robots. As he investigates rumors about advanced humanoids, he discovers that scientists have created artificial bodies capable of holding human memories and personalities. The difference between a biological person and a manufactured one begins to disappear. Its most important scene is not an action sequence. It is the moment when a character learns that identity may not depend on the body at all. Memories, emotions, habits, and personal loyalty can survive even when the original physical form does not. The production is small, and much of the film consists of people discussing ideas inside brightly colored rooms. Yet those conversations are surprisingly modern. The movie explores prejudice, replacement anxiety, artificial consciousness, and the fear that machines may become more reasonable than their creators. Instead of presenting robots as simple invaders, the story asks whether humanity is mistreating a new form of life. That gives the creation of the humanoids an intelligence far beyond its budget. It may look like a theatrical television production, but its questions about memory, personhood, and synthetic bodies are now more relevant than ever. Number 34. First spaceship on Venus, 1960. A mysterious object discovered on Earth leads an international crew toward a silent planet. Scientists determine that the object came from Venus and may contain evidence of an earlier plan to attack humanity. A group of astronauts travels there, hoping to contact the civilization responsible, but they find enormous machines, deserted structures, and no living population. The landscape of Venus is one of the film's greatest achievements. Strange forests, glowing substances, metallic towers, and wide industrial chambers create the impression of a civilization that was both advanced and deeply unstable. Rather than meeting alien invaders, the astronauts explore the remains of a society that appears to have destroyed itself. Its most powerful sequence comes when the crew finally understands what happened. The Venusians developed technology capable of attacking Earth, but their own weapons were turned against them before the invasion could begin. The threat was real, yet the attackers became the first victims of their aggression. That revelation transforms the movie from a simple space adventure into a warning about scientific progress without moral responsibility. Made as an international Eastern European production, it also presents astronauts from different nations working together instead of competing for control. Some versions released outside Europe were heavily edited, but the original remains visually ambitious. Its machines, color photography, and planetary landscapes still carry a strange beauty. First spaceship on Venus may be slow for modern audiences, but its warning is clear. A civilization can master space and still fail to master itself. Number 33. Crack in the World, 1965. The plan sounds brilliant until the entire planet begins breaking apart. Scientists want to reach the enormous energy hidden beneath Earth's crust. To do it, they fire a powerful explosive deep underground, hoping to open a controlled passage to the planet's interior. Instead, the experiment creates a massive fracture. The crack begins traveling across continents, growing wider and faster as it moves. If the two ends eventually meet, part of Earth could separate completely, causing a disaster beyond anything humanity has experienced. One unforgettable sequence shows the fracture tearing across the landscape. Buildings shake, roads collapse, and the ground opens, while scientists watch the line of destruction continue across their maps. The danger is not a creature or invading army. It is the planet itself reacting to human interference. The movie gains strength from the conflict between its scientists. Some believe the experiment can provide unlimited energy, while others warn that the risks are impossible to measure. Their disagreement feels believable because neither side begins as a clear villain. The disaster grows from ambition, impatience, and the desire to solve one problem without understanding the larger system. Its miniature destruction remains impressive, especially when mountains and industrial areas begin collapsing. More importantly, the story now feels connected to modern concerns about extreme engineering and environmental damage. Number 32. Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, 1961. The sky is burning, temperatures are rising, and the only possible solution lies beneath the ocean. After a radiation belt surrounding Earth catches fire, the nuclear submarine Seaview begins a desperate journey toward a location where its commander believes a missile can extinguish the flames. The mission immediately divides the crew. Admiral Nelson insists that his calculations are correct, but other scientists believe his plan could make the situation worse. Communication with the surface becomes unreliable. Dangerous creatures attack the submarine, and time begins disappearing. The film's most famous visual is the Seaview moving beneath the ocean while the sky above glows an unnatural red. The contrast is beautiful and frightening. Humanity has built an advanced machine capable of traveling through the deepest waters, yet the entire planet is being threatened by something no machine can easily control. Director Irwin Allen fills the movie with underwater hazards, damaged equipment, arguments, and ticking clock suspense. The glass observation windows of the Seaview remain one of classic science fiction's most attractive pieces of production design. Beneath the adventure lies a debate about leadership. Nelson may be the only person willing to make a difficult decision, or he may be an obsessed commander, risking everything to prove himself right. The crew must choose whether to trust his experience while evidence continues changing around them. Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea later inspired a successful television series, But the original film stands on its own. Its planetary emergency, scientific disagreement, and unforgettable submarine still make it an exciting piece of early 60s spectacle. Number 31. Mysterious Island, 1961. A prison escape carries several Civil War soldiers much farther than they expected. After stealing a hot air balloon during a violent storm, the men and their companions drift across the world before crashing on an unknown island. At first, the island appears beautiful and empty. Then enormous animals begin appearing. A giant crab attacks the survivors near the shore. An oversized bird threatens them from above. Later, they encounter gigantic bees, underwater dangers, and evidence that someone has been secretly helping them. The explanation arrives with Captain Nemo, who has created experiments designed to increase the world's food supply. The giant crab scene remains the film's most celebrated sequence. Ray Harryhausen used stop-motion animation to give the creature weight and personality. The actors push against its claws, hide beneath rocks, and finally turn the animal into an unlikely meal. The sequence is exciting because the creature seems to share the same physical environment as the performers. Bernard Herrmann's powerful music makes the island feel even larger. Every discovery is accompanied by a sense of wonder, danger, or both. The film is based loosely on Jules Verne's novel, but it expands the creature action to create a family adventure filled with handmade imagination. Yet the story also asks serious questions about scientific responsibility. Nemo believes he can use knowledge to end hunger and conflict, but his isolated methods have separated him from ordinary humanity. Modern effects may be smoother, but they rarely possess the tactile charm found here. Mysterious Island remains an example of how models, painted backgrounds, music, and patient animation can build a world that audiences genuinely want to explore. Number 30. First Men in the Moon, 1964. The first human journey to the moon does not begin with modern astronauts. It begins in Victorian England with an eccentric inventor, a struggling writer, and an impossible substance called captivate. This material blocks gravity, allowing a homemade sphere to travel into space. Once the travelers reach the moon, they discover that its empty surface hides an enormous underground civilization. The Selenites are intelligent insect-like beings, living inside vast chambers, tunnels, and machines. They study the human visitors, and the visitors respond with a mixture of curiosity, fear, and arrogance. The most memorable scene shows the explorers entering the huge lunar interior. Bridges cross deep spaces, Selenites move through organized groups, and strange machines operate beneath the surface. Ray Harryhausen's animation gives the inhabitants distinctive movement, while the sets make their world feel surprisingly large. What makes the story more interesting than a simple lunar adventure is its attitude toward exploration. The humans assume they have the right to enter, take objects, and defend themselves aggressively. From the Selenites' perspective, however, the visitors may be violent invaders. The framing story adds another clever idea. Modern astronauts reach the moon and discover evidence that the Victorian expedition arrived decades earlier. This connects the colorful fantasy of H.G. Wells with the real space race happening when the film was released. Number 29. The Day of the Triffids, 1962. A spectacular meteor shower becomes the beginning of civilization's collapse. Millions of people gather outside to watch the sky, unaware that the light will leave almost everyone blind. When morning arrives, streets are filled with confused crowds, abandoned vehicles, and systems that can no longer function. At the same time, tall experimental plants called triffids begin moving through the countryside. These plants can uproot themselves, communicate through strange sounds, and strike with poisonous stingers. Humanity has lost its sight, just as a new predator has gained freedom. One of the film's strongest sequences takes place in the city after the meteor shower. Sightless people stumble through stations and streets, calling for help that never arrives. The triffids are not yet visible everywhere, but the collapse has already begun. That silence gives the scene more power than a large action sequence. The story follows a sailor whose bandaged eyes protected him during the meteor display. He joins a young girl and later searches for other survivors while the plants spread. A separate storyline follows scientists trapped inside a lighthouse, desperately experimenting with ways to destroy the creatures. Although the effects are simple, the central nightmare remains effective. Modern civilization depends on sight, communication, transportation, and cooperation. Remove those things overnight, and even a slow-moving plant becomes almost unstoppable. The movie differs significantly from John Wyndham's novel, but its images have influenced countless apocalypse stories. The sightless crowds, empty cities, and approaching triffids still create the frightening sense that humanity's position at the top of the world can disappear in a single night. Number 28. The Satan Bug, 1965. Nothing appears frightening at first. There is only an isolated research facility in the desert, several silent rooms, and the uncomfortable feeling that everyone inside has disappeared. Then investigators discover that a highly dangerous biological substance has been stolen. The most serious threat is known as the Satan bug, an organism capable of spreading through the air and making entire regions uninhabitable. A former intelligence officer named Lee Barrett is ordered to find the missing material before the thief releases it. The search leads through laboratories, military offices, city streets, and hidden personal connections. The empty station sequence is the film's finest moment. There are no visible creatures and no spectacular effects. Doors stand open, equipment continues operating, and every quiet corridor suggests that containment has already failed. The threat is terrifying precisely because it cannot be seen. Director John Sturges approaches the story like a serious procedural thriller. Scientists discuss security systems, transportation, air currents, and possible exposure. These details make the danger feel practical rather than fantastic. The film understands that an invisible organism could create more fear than an invading fleet because nobody would know where safety ended. Its central conflict also remains relevant. The technology was developed inside a protected system, but that system depends on human loyalty. One dishonest or unstable person can turn a scientific achievement into a weapon. The widescreen photography gives the desert locations an empty, exposed quality. Even crowded places feel vulnerable once viewers understand what could be released into the air. The Satan bug avoids exaggerated spectacle and concentrates on suspense, betrayal, and scientific responsibility. That restraint has helped it age extremely well. Many modern thrillers use faster editing and larger budgets, but few create danger as effectively from a sealed container that everyone is afraid to open. Number 27. Marooned, 1969. Space is presented not as a fantasy kingdom, but as a cold environment governed by fuel, oxygen, distance, and time. Three astronauts are completing a long mission when their spacecraft engine fails. They cannot begin the journey home, and their remaining air will not last long enough for an easy rescue. Mission Control begins preparing an experimental craft, but weather conditions on Earth threaten the launch. Inside the stranded capsule, the astronauts attempt repairs, calculate their oxygen, and struggle to remain calm. Nobody can simply fly toward them without considering orbital paths and limited supplies. The film's most powerful scenes are often the quietest. The men breathe carefully while watching their instruments. Their families wait for news. Engineers study weather reports that may decide whether the rescue can even begin. Every minute has a measurable cost. A major turning point arrives when the crew understands that not everyone may survive. The conversation is controlled, almost professional, which makes it more emotional. These are trained astronauts trying to discuss an unbearable decision as if it were another technical problem. The rescue sequence combines storms, launch preparations, orbital maneuvers, and an unexpected encounter in space. The effects were created before the first moon landing had fully changed public expectations, yet much of the hardware still appears convincing. Marooned helped establish the realistic space emergency formula, later used by many films. There is no evil computer, alien monster, or secret weapon. The antagonist is a mechanical failure occurring in a place where even a small mistake becomes final. That simplicity gives the movie lasting strength. Heroism is shown as discipline rather than bravado. Scientists, pilots, engineers, and astronauts work together across enormous distances. The result is slower than a modern space thriller, but its patience creates authenticity. When a character takes one careful breath, the audience understands exactly what that breath costs. Number 26. Bader Bella, 1968. Some science fiction films imagine the future through engineering. This one imagines it through fashion, music, color, and complete visual freedom. Barbarella travels across the galaxy on a mission to find the missing scientist Durand Durand, whose powerful invention could disturb a peaceful future. Her journey carries her through frozen landscapes, floating cities, strange laboratories, and a shadowy place called Sogo. Along the way, she encounters dangerous children, a blind winged man named Pygar, a revolutionary, an eccentric professor, and the mysterious Great Tyrant. The movie's most famous sequence involves the excessive machine, a device designed to overwhelm its victim through pleasure. Durand Durand expects the machine to defeat Barbarella, but she proves too powerful for it. The machine breaks down while its inventor watches in disbelief, turning the scene into one of the decade's strangest comic victories. The story is not built around realistic science. Its spacecraft has soft interiors, its costumes appear designed for a futuristic fashion magazine, and its planets operate according to fantasy logic. That is exactly why the film remains visually influential. Jane Fonda plays Barbarella with innocence rather than cynicism. She enters dangerous situations without understanding the selfishness or cruelty surrounding her. Her peaceful confidence becomes a form of resistance against societies built on control. The production design captures the rebellious energy of the late 1960s. Every room looks like an art installation. Every costume makes a statement. And every new character seems to belong to a different dream. Barbarella is uneven, ridiculous, and impossible to separate from its era. Yet its confidence has never disappeared. It proves science fiction does not always need to predict technology. Sometimes it can create a visual language so distinctive that filmmakers, musicians, photographers, and designers continue borrowing from it for generations. Number 25. The Illustrated Man, 1969. A stranger, covered in moving illustrations, becomes the doorway to several disturbing futures. While traveling through the countryside, a young man encounters Carl, an angry drifter whose body is covered with elaborate designs. Carl claims the images were created by a mysterious woman and that each one reveals a story. The film then enters three tales adapted from Ray Bradbury. In the Veldt, wealthy parents install an advanced nursery capable of transforming thoughts into realistic environments. Their children repeatedly create an African landscape filled with lions. The parents slowly realize that the room is not simply entertaining the children, it is responding to their resentment. That nursery provides the movie's most famous sequence. The walls disappear, heat fills the room, and the sound of animals becomes increasingly convincing. Technology has turned imagination into physical space, but the adults have no control over what their children imagine. Another story follows astronauts stranded beneath constant rain, desperately searching for shelter. A third presents a society in which children are sent into space because their parents believe the world is approaching disaster. Rod Steiger gives Carl an intense, unpredictable presence. His anger connects the separate stories, suggesting that every future vision is another expression of emotional pain. The framing narrative is sometimes confusing, but the atmosphere remains strong. Bradbury's central concern appears throughout the film. Technology does not remove human weakness. It gives that weakness a larger room in which to operate. A nursery magnifies hatred. Space travel cannot eliminate desperation. Scientific progress does not guarantee emotional maturity. The Illustrated Man is not a perfect adaptation, yet its best moments are haunting. The moving artwork, hostile nursery, endless rain, and uncertain future create images that remain difficult to forget. Its technology may belong to fantasy, but its families, fears, and emotional failures remain painfully recognizable. Number 24. The Bed-Sitting Room, 1969. The world has ended, but British society is still attempting to remain polite. After a nuclear conflict lasting only a few minutes, survivors wander through a ruined landscape filled with broken trains, damaged buildings, piles of objects, and fragments of old authority. Instead of rebuilding civilization, the characters continue behaving according to social habits that no longer make sense. Police officers float through the air under a balloon while telling people to keep moving. A family lives inside an abandoned underground train. Officials discuss government responsibilities, even though there is almost no government left. Then, the survivors begin transforming. One character becomes a wardrobe. Another slowly changes into the bed-sitting room of the title. The transformations are accepted with bureaucratic confusion rather than horror, making them even more unsettling. The scene in which Lord Fortnum realizes he is becoming a room captures the movie's entire approach. His identity, social position, and physical body are disappearing. Yet everyone continues debating the situation as though it were an administrative inconvenience. Director Richard Lester uses enormous piles of wreckage and empty landscapes to create a surreal version of post-apocalyptic Britain. The humor is absurd, but the environment is genuinely bleak. Jokes occur beside ruined machines and reminders that millions of people are gone. The film's satire is aimed at class, government, television, medicine, and the belief that familiar institutions will remain meaningful under any circumstances. Even after society collapses, characters still seek titles, authority, and official approval. The Bed-Sitting Room confused many viewers because it refuses to behave like a conventional story. It feels closer to a nightmare performed as a comedy. That unusual combination has helped it endure. Beneath the nonsense is a serious observation. Humanity may survive a catastrophe physically while remaining trapped inside the habits and hierarchies that helped create it. Number 23. Privilege, 1967. Stephen Shorter appears to be the most successful pop star in Britain. Crowds chase him. Television programs follow him. Companies sell products using his image. and government officials study his influence. Yet Steven controls almost nothing about his own career. His managers design every public appearance. During one stage show, he performs inside a cage, while actors dressed as guards pretend to mistreat him. The audience becomes furious, turning Steven into a symbol of rebellion. The rebellion is fake, but the emotion it produces is real. The government recognizes his power and decides to redirect it. Steven is transformed from an angry pop idol into the center of a patriotic religious movement. His clothes, songs, interviews, and public personality are altered. Millions of young followers are encouraged to transfer their devotion from entertainment to national obedience. The enormous stadium rally is the film's most frightening sequence. Music, religious imagery, political speeches, advertising, and celebrity worship combine into one carefully controlled event. The crowd believes it is expressing love, but every response has been planned in advance. Director Peter Watkins presents the story with documentary techniques. Interviews, television footage, advertising campaigns, and official statements make the fictional future look like something already happening. That style removes the safe distance usually provided by science fiction. Steven gradually understands that his identity has become public property. Even his attempt to speak honestly is packaged, broadcast, and controlled by the same system he wants to escape. Privilege was made before social media, influencers, personalized branding, and 24-hour celebrity culture. Yet its central argument now feels disturbingly modern. A famous person can be sold as rebellious while serving powerful institutions. Public emotion can be measured, redirected, and monetized. Entertainment can become politics without announcing the change. The film is not subtle, but subtlety would weaken its anger. Its future is built without spaceships or robots. The technology is television, mass marketing, and carefully manufactured devotion. And that technology has become more powerful, not less. Number 22. The Damned, 1962. What begins as a crime drama slowly reveals one of British science fiction's coldest secrets. An American visitor becomes involved with a young woman whose controlling brother leads a violent gang. Their personal conflict carries them toward an isolated military facility hidden near the coast. Inside that facility lives a group of children. They appear intelligent, polite, and desperate for contact with the outside world. However, their bodies are dangerously radioactive. Scientists believe the children may be capable of surviving the nuclear future that adults expect to create. The most painful scenes show the children reaching toward ordinary people while being unable to touch them safely. They have books, lessons, and carefully controlled living spaces, but no true families. Their entire existence has been designed as an experiment. Government officials describe the project as necessary. If nuclear conflict makes the world uninhabitable, these children may become humanity's replacement. That explanation is delivered calmly, which makes the situation more disturbing. The children are being protected, imprisoned, studied, and sacrificed at the same time. Director Joseph Losey moves from open seaside locations into increasingly cold underground rooms. The change in setting mirrors the story's transformation. What appeared to be a conflict between individuals becomes evidence of a much larger system built on fear. The film refuses to provide an easy rescue. Anyone who discovers the children becomes a threat to national security. Personal compassion has no place inside the official plan. The Damned arrived during a period of intense nuclear anxiety, but its message goes beyond one historical moment. Institutions often claim that cruelty is necessary for the future. Once that argument is accepted, innocent people can be treated as material rather than human beings. Number 21. Gok, Body Snatcher from Hell, 1968. A passenger aircraft crosses a blood-red sky while news of violence and political conflict plays over the radio. Before reaching its destination, the plane encounters a strange, glowing object and crashes in an isolated landscape. The survivors immediately begin turning against one another. Among them are politicians, criminals, businessmen, a frightened crew, and people carrying private resentments. Their arguments create almost as much danger as the alien presence waiting outside. Nobody trusts anyone, and every attempt at cooperation collapses under selfishness. The film's most famous image arrives when a survivor approaches the alien craft. A glowing vertical opening appears in the person's forehead, allowing a strange organism to enter and take control. The effect is simple but deeply unsettling because it transforms the human face into a doorway. Once possessed, the victims begin attacking the others. Yet the aliens do not create the group's cruelty. They merely use divisions that already exist. The passengers lie, threaten, betray, and abandon one another long before the invasion becomes fully visible. Director Hajime Sato fills the film with unnatural color. The red sky, orange landscape, dark interiors, and silver alien vessel create an atmosphere that feels disconnected from ordinary Earth. Even the daylight appears contaminated. As the story develops, the scale of the emergency becomes larger. The crash is not an isolated event, and the survivors may be witnessing the end of human civilization. The final images turn the entire planet into part of the nightmare. Gokei, Body Snatcher from Hell, is sometimes compared with more famous alien possession films, but its anger is uniquely its own. The invaders are frightening, yet the movie's darkest conclusion is that humanity has already prepared itself for defeat. Number 20. Matango, 1963. A pleasure cruise ends in fog, hunger, and psychological collapse. A group of wealthy or ambitious people takes a yacht into dangerous weather and becomes stranded near an apparently deserted island. Their boat is damaged, their supplies are limited, and the surrounding forest appears unnaturally quiet. While searching the island, the survivors discover another abandoned vessel. Its interior is covered with strange growth, and the crew's records contain warnings about mushrooms found nearby. Eating them may provide relief from hunger, but the effect on the human body remains unknown. At first, everyone agrees to avoid the mushrooms. That agreement weakens as food disappears and distrust grows. Personal rivalries become more intense. Some characters hide supplies. Others attempt to control the group, and several begin seeing the mushrooms as an escape from fear. The most memorable sequence occurs when the forest fills with laughing figures whose bodies have transformed into colorful human-fungus hybrids. Their happiness is both inviting and horrifying. They no longer appear hungry, frightened, or lonely, but they have also surrendered their humanity. Director Ishiro Honda, best known for giant monster films, creates a much more intimate nightmare here. The damp sets, heavy fog, rotting ship, and unnatural colors make the island feel diseased. There is no heroic military response, and no citywide battle. The danger grows inside a small group. The mushrooms can be understood as addiction, conformity, pleasure, or the desire to escape responsibility. They do not simply attack people, they offer them comfort. That choice gives the story psychological depth. Matango becomes darker as it continues, because the survivor's behavior is believable. Hunger exposes selfishness, but it also creates temptation. The final survivor may escape the island physically, yet the experience leaves him uncertain whether the transformed people were truly less happy. Number 19. The War Game, 1966. At first glance, this appears to be a documentary recorded after a real disaster. Officials speak directly to the camera. Citizens answer questions. Emergency plans are explained in calm voices. Then, a nuclear weapon strikes Britain, and every reassuring statement begins falling apart. Director Peter Watkins imagined what would happen in an English community during and after an attack. The film follows emergency workers, families, doctors, police officers, and government representatives as heat, destroyed infrastructure, overcrowding, hunger, and panic overwhelm the system. One of its most powerful techniques is the contrast between official language and visible reality. Authorities describe organized procedures while the images show confusion. Medical plans exist, but there are not enough resources. Public information exists, but communication systems fail. Instructions sound confident until they meet actual human suffering. The attack sequence is frightening because it avoids the polished spectacle associated with conventional cinema. The camera shakes, people react without heroic speeches, and the environment becomes unrecognizable. The footage feels accidental, as though a news crew captured events it was never meant to witness. The BBC originally decided not to broadcast the film, although it later received theatrical screenings and won an Academy Award. Its realism was considered too disturbing for television audiences at the time. What makes the war game science fiction is not advanced machinery. It is the act of imagining a near future and examining the consequences honestly. The technology already existed. The fiction came from showing what might happen if it were used. Many disaster films allow audiences to enjoy destruction from a safe distance. This one refuses that comfort. It presents nuclear conflict as administrative collapse, personal terror, and the disappearance of ordinary life. Number 18. Je t'aime, 1968. Time travel becomes a prison, built from memory in this deeply unusual French film. Claude Ritter survives an attempt to end his life and is approached by scientists conducting a secret experiment. They have successfully sent mice into the past and now require a human subject. The experiment is supposed to return Claude to one moment exactly 1 year earlier. He enters a strange machine shaped like an enormous soft chamber, and the procedure begins. Something goes wrong almost immediately. Instead of visiting one controlled minute, Claude becomes trapped inside fragments of his relationship with Katrine. Moments repeat, change position, or end before their meaning becomes clear. A holiday, an argument, a quiet room, a walk near the sea, and a painful confession appear like pieces of film cut by memory itself. The malfunctioning machine sequence is important, but the film's true special effect is editing. Claude does not move through time in a straight line. He experiences the past the way a troubled mind remembers it, returning obsessively to certain details while avoiding others. Gradually, the audience understands that he carries guilt connected to Katrine's death. The experiment is not simply showing him what happened. It is forcing him to confront the emotional patterns he has tried to escape. Director Alain Resnais turns science fiction inward. There are no futuristic cities, alien creatures, or action scenes. The laboratory provides the idea, but Claude's memory provides the world. The repeated images become more emotional because they are ordinary. A hotel room or beach can hold as much mystery as another planet, when the viewer does not know why the moment matters. Its structure demands patience, but the reward is a unique time travel film about regret. Modern stories often treat memory as information that can be replayed. This film understands that memory is unstable, selective, and emotionally dangerous. Number 17, Night of the Living Dead, 1968. A quiet visit to a cemetery becomes the collapse of the known world. Barbara and her brother are approached by a strange man moving across the grounds. The encounter turns violent, and Barbara escapes to a remote farmhouse, where she meets Ben and several other frightened survivors. Outside, recently deceased people are rising and moving toward the living. Radio and television broadcasts suggest that radiation from a space probe may be involved, but no explanation becomes certain. The scientific details matter less than the immediate problem. The farmhouse is surrounded. The movie's tension comes from two directions. Outside waits an expanding crowd. Inside, the survivors cannot agree on what to do. Ben wants to defend the upper floor and maintain escape routes. Harry Cooper insists the cellar is safer. Their struggle for control weakens the group at the exact moment cooperation becomes essential. The television scenes are among the film's most effective. Everyone gathers around the screen, hoping officials will provide clear instructions. Instead, the reports are incomplete, contradictory, and already behind the spreading emergency. George A. Romero filmed with limited resources, but the rough black and white photography gives the story documentary force. The farmhouse feels small, dirty, and physically vulnerable. Windows must be covered with whatever furniture is available. Every broken board matters. The film's final sequence remains one of the most shocking endings in American cinema. Survival does not lead to safety, and rescue does not guarantee understanding. The conclusion turns the entire story into a brutal statement about fear and mistaken judgment. Night of the Living Dead transformed horror, but it also belongs to science fiction through its speculative catastrophe, emergency broadcasts, and vision of social breakdown. The creatures became enormously influential, yet the human conflict is what keeps the film powerful. Number 16, Planet of the Vampires, 1965. Two spacecraft respond to a mysterious signal from an unexplored planet. As they enter its atmosphere, an unknown force takes control of the crews and causes them to attack one another. When the survivors regain consciousness, several people are already gone. Captain Marcari and his remaining crew search the fog-covered landscape for answers. They discover that members of the second expedition have been affected by an alien intelligence. Bodies rise, familiar faces become untrustworthy, and the planet itself appears to be waiting for new arrivals. The film's most famous sequence occurs when the astronauts enter the remains of an enormous alien spacecraft. Inside, they find the skeleton of a gigantic non-human pilot. The image suggests that the planet has trapped travelers for centuries, and that humanity is only the latest civilization to answer its signal. Mario Bava created the planet using smoke, colored lights, rocky sets, and carefully controlled camera angles. The budget was limited, yet the world feels enormous because very little is shown clearly. Red, blue, and green fog hides the edges of the sets and gives every movement an unreal quality. The leather uniforms, strange weapons, and silent landscapes create a visual style unlike most American space films from the same period. Nothing appears clean or optimistic. Space travel feels like entering a haunted house without walls. The alien force does not need its own permanent body. It uses the bodies of explorers, making identity uncertain. A crew member may look familiar while serving an intelligence that views humans only as transportation. The ending deepens that idea with a final reversal. Escape may not mean victory, and the people returning home may no longer be the people who left. Planet of the Vampires influenced the visual language of later space horror. but it remains more than a historical curiosity. Its atmosphere is still extraordinary. The physical effects may be simple, yet the fog, color, silence, and giant skeleton create an alien nightmare that modern technology has rarely improved. Number 15. The Face of Another, 1966. After an industrial accident damages his face, engineer Okuyama becomes separated from ordinary society. Bandages hide his injuries, but they also make every conversation uncomfortable. He believes strangers fear him and suspects that his wife can no longer see him as the same person. A psychiatrist offers an experimental solution, a realistic mask created from the face of another man. The mask will move naturally, respond to expression, and allow Okuyama to enter public life without being recognized. At first, the new face feels liberating. He rents a separate apartment, changes his clothing, and moves through the city as though he has become a different person. Then, he begins testing the moral freedom provided by anonymity. One of the film's most unsettling sequences shows Okuyama entering a crowded entertainment district wearing the mask. Nobody knows his history. Nobody responds to his scars. The freedom he desired immediately becomes an excuse to behave in ways he previously resisted. He even approaches his own wife while pretending to be a stranger. He wants to prove that she is unfaithful, but his experiment reveals more about his manipulation than her character. Director Hiroshi Teshigahara fills the film with mirrors, empty rooms, transparent walls, artificial ears, and medical displays. The psychiatrist's laboratory resembles a half-finished future where human identity can be taken apart and redesigned. A parallel story follows a young woman whose face was scarred during wartime. Her response to isolation differs from Okuyama's, giving the film a second perspective on appearance, rejection, and emotional pain. The science fiction device is the mask, but the real subject is social identity. Does a face create behavior, or does it simply provide permission? If nobody recognizes us, do we become free or irresponsible? The Face of Another refuses an easy answer. Okuyama blames society, his wife, and his injuries, yet the mask exposes impulses that were already present. Technology does not create a new man. It removes the excuses protecting the old one. Number 14. The 10th Victim, 1965. In the future, organized violence has become a popular international game. Participants join the Big Hunt, completing 10 rounds in which they alternate between hunter and victim. Success brings money, fame, advertising contracts, and public attention. Caroline Meredith is an experienced hunter approaching her final assignment. Her target is Marcello Poletti, an Italian man struggling with debt, marriage, and the exhausting rules of the competition. Caroline plans to eliminate him during a televised advertising event, but Marcello learns enough to become suspicious. Their relationship develops into a mixture of romance, performance, and strategy. Each person may be attracted to the other, but neither can forget that one is officially expected to defeat the other. The film's most famous scene involves Caroline's carefully staged attack inside an entertainment venue. The event is designed for cameras and sponsors, turning personal danger into branded content. The cheering audience cares less about the victim than the quality of the presentation. Director Elio Petri builds the future from modern architecture, bold clothing, stylish furniture, and pop art advertising. There are few futuristic machines because the society itself is the invention. Violence has not disappeared. It has been commercialized and given rules. The Big Hunt is promoted as a way to control aggression. People who want conflict can participate voluntarily while the rest of society remains peaceful. Yet the game encourages surveillance, deception, celebrity worship, and public cruelty. The comedy is bright, but the ideas are dark. Contestants become influencers before that word existed. Sponsors shape public events. Cameras transform danger into entertainment. Even romance becomes difficult because every emotional gesture might be part of a campaign. The 10th Victim predicted reality television, competitive celebrity culture, and advertising that erases the line between genuine life and performance. Its costumes and music clearly belong to the 60s, but its world feels remarkably familiar. Number 13. Robinson Crusoe on Mars, 1964. A mission to Mars ends in disaster when astronauts Kit Draper and Dan McReady are forced to abandon their spacecraft. Draper survives the landing, but he is alone on a planet with almost no supplies, limited oxygen, and no clear way to communicate with Earth. His first challenge is breathing. He discovers rocks that release small amounts of oxygen when heated. Water must be found, food must be rationed, and shelter must protect him from the planet's extreme conditions. A small monkey named Mona becomes his only companion. Their relationship gives the film warmth because Draper speaks to the animal as though maintaining conversation will protect his own sanity. One of the most beautiful scenes shows him looking toward Earth as a tiny light in the Martian sky. The distance suddenly becomes emotional rather than scientific. Home is visible, but completely unreachable. Later, Draper discovers an escaped worker from another world and names him Friday. This expands the story beyond solitary survival. The two men cannot initially speak the same language, but cooperation becomes necessary when alien mining ships return. The Martian landscapes were created using desert locations, colored skies, matte paintings, and imaginative production design. The planet feels vast because Draper appears physically small against cliffs, caves, and empty horizons. Unlike many space adventures, the film spends time on practical details. Survival depends on observation, patience, and experimentation. Draper does not conquer Mars. He learns how little the planet needs to do in order to defeat him. The relationship with Friday also changes the meaning of the title. Draper begins as a Robinson Crusoe figure, but he must avoid treating his new companion as a servant. Friendship, rather than ownership, becomes essential. Robinson Crusoe on Mars remains one of the finest early films about isolation on another planet. Its science is not always accurate, but its emotional truth is convincing. Loneliness, resourcefulness, fear, and the need for another human voice require no special effects to feel real. Number 12. Icaria XB-1, 1963. A large spacecraft leaves Earth carrying scientists, families, and crew members toward a distant star. The journey will take years, and the people aboard must build a temporary society inside the ship. Their greatest challenges are not constant battles. They are distance, boredom, responsibility, and the psychological weight of leaving Earth behind. The crew celebrates birthdays, exercises, studies instruments, forms relationships, and responds to technical emergencies. This ordinary activity makes the spacecraft feel inhabited rather than merely designed. It is not a military vessel filled with action heroes. It is a community traveling into the unknown. One extraordinary sequence begins when the crew discovers an abandoned 20th century spacecraft. Astronauts enter wearing protective suits and find bodies preserved inside. They also discover weapons, revealing that the old ship carried the violence of Earth into space. The scene works as an encounter between the future and the past. The explorers do not discover an advanced alien civilization. They discover the remains of humanity's earlier fear. Later, radiation from a mysterious dark star affects the crew. People collapse into sleep, systems become uncertain, and the mission appears threatened by a force the travelers cannot understand. The production design is remarkably forward-looking. Curved corridors, electronic displays, practical living spaces, and clean geometric rooms influenced later visions of space travel. The ship feels modern without appearing magical. Icaria XB-1 also presents an international future in which cooperation is treated as normal. The story is less concerned with national competition than with whether humanity has matured enough to travel responsibly. Its pace is patient, but that patience gives the journey scale. Viewers feel that the crew is far from Earth because the movie allows time to pass. Every celebration and emergency becomes part of a long shared experience. The film's hopeful ending separates it from many darker works on this list. The unknown may be dangerous, but it can also represent progress. Humanity's future depends on leaving old weapons, divisions, and suspicions behind. Number 11. Fahrenheit 451, 1966. Books have been outlawed, and firemen no longer extinguish fires. Their job is to locate hidden libraries and burn them. Guy Montag performs this duty without questioning the system until he meets a curious neighbor named Clarice. Unlike everyone around him, Clarice asks direct questions. Is Montag happy? Has he ever read one of the books he destroys? Why is conversation considered suspicious? Her curiosity creates a crack in the identity he has accepted. At home, Montag's wife spends most of her time watching enormous wall-sized screens. The programs invite viewers to participate in empty dramatic situations, creating the illusion of companionship without genuine communication. One of the movie's most unforgettable scenes occurs when an elderly woman refuses to abandon her hidden library. The firemen expect her to surrender, but she chooses to remain with the books as the room is set alight. Her decision forces Montag to wonder what could be valuable enough to inspire such resistance. He begins stealing books from the houses he searches. Reading changes his understanding of language, history, and personal thought. It also makes ordinary conversation with his wife and colleagues increasingly difficult. Director Francois Truffaut creates a future that looks clean rather than ruined. The houses are comfortable, transportation is efficient, and television provides constant entertainment. Control succeeds because citizens are distracted, not simply frightened. The firemen's vehicles and uniforms have a cold ceremonial quality. Each book destruction is presented as a public cleansing, as though ideas were physical contamination. The film changes several elements of Ray Bradbury's novel, but its central warning remains powerful. Censorship does not always begin with soldiers entering homes. It can begin when society decides that difficult thought is unpleasant and distraction is easier. The final sequence follows people who have memorized books, preserving literature by becoming living copies. Snow falls as they recite their chosen texts. The image is quiet, hopeful, and deeply human. Number 10. Fantastic Voyage, 1966. A scientist with vital information is injured before he can reveal what he knows. Ordinary surgery cannot reach the clot inside his brain, so a medical team is placed inside an experimental submarine, miniaturized, and injected into his bloodstream. The crew has only 1 hour before the miniaturization process reverses. They must travel through arteries, enter the brain, repair the damage, and escape before they return to normal size inside the patient. The premise could easily become ridiculous, but the film explains each stage with enough confidence to make the journey exciting. The submarine moves past enormous blood cells, enters the heart, passes through the lungs, and encounters the body's natural defense systems. Its most famous sequence occurs inside the heart. The medical team must stop the organ temporarily because the force of each beat could destroy the submarine. For several tense seconds, the enormous chamber becomes silent. Then the heartbeat returns like a giant machine restarting. Another memorable scene involves white blood cells surrounding a crew member. What appears beautiful from a distance becomes dangerous when the body identifies the miniature humans as foreign material. The production design transforms anatomy into landscape. Arteries resemble glowing tunnels, nerve fibers become forests of light, and internal organs appear larger than buildings. The effects won an Academy Award and still possess a dreamlike beauty. Suspicion also develops inside the submarine because one member of the mission may be attempting sabotage. This gives the story a human threat in addition to the biological hazards. Fantastic Voyage treats the body as the final unexplored world. Space travel usually carries characters outward, but this journey moves inward towards structures every human being carries without ever seeing. Some scientific details are impossible, yet the film's sense of discovery remains irresistible. It combines medical suspense, espionage, adventure, and visual imagination in a way few later films have matched. Number 9. Seconds, 1966. Arthur Hamilton has a successful career, a comfortable house, and a marriage that has become emotionally empty. Then he receives a telephone call from a friend believed to be gone. The voice directs him toward a mysterious organization known only as the Company. The Company offers dissatisfied clients complete rebirth. Arthur's old life will be ended through a carefully staged accident. Surgery will change his face and body. A new career, home, history, and identity will be prepared for him. He accepts and emerges as Tony Wilson, a younger-looking artist living in California. The transformation appears successful, but Tony soon discovers that freedom, designed by another organization, can become another form of control. The grape-stomping celebration is one of the film's strangest sequences. Tony is carried into a crowd, covered with crushed fruit, and encouraged to abandon self-consciousness. The event appears joyful, yet the distorted camera angles make it feel threatening. He is performing liberation rather than experiencing it. Rock Hudson gives one of his finest performances. His appearance represents the perfect new life, but his discomfort reveals that Arthur's loneliness survived the surgery. Cinematographer James Wong Howe uses wide lenses, hidden cameras, extreme close-ups, and unstable movement to make ordinary rooms feel hostile. Faces stretch near the edge of the frame, hallways become traps, and the Company's offices resemble both a business and a nightmare. Tony eventually searches for other reborns and discovers that many are equally unhappy. They have new bodies but no new selves. The Company can manufacture circumstances, but it cannot create purpose. When Tony attempts to leave, the organization reveals the true cost of failure. Its system requires a continuous supply of new clients and new identities. Personal dissatisfaction has become an industry. Seconds remains powerful because it understands the fantasy of reinvention. People often imagine that a different face, career, home, or social circle would solve internal unhappiness. The film asks what happens when every external change is granted and the emptiness remains. Number 8. Quatermass and the Pit, 1967. Construction workers digging beneath London uncover what appears to be an unexploded wartime weapon. Scientists are called to the site, but the object is made from an unknown material and appears far older than the surrounding buildings. Nearby, workers discover unusual skeletons with enlarged skulls. Professor Bernard Quatermass begins suspecting that the object is not a weapon at all. It is an ancient spacecraft buried beneath the city for millions of years. Inside are the remains of insect-like creatures from Mars. Their civilization may have interfered with early human development, placing parts of its own behavior inside humanity. Superstition, violent group instinct, and fear of outsiders may be inherited memories rather than purely cultural inventions. The most memorable sequence occurs when the spacecraft activates those buried memories. People across London experience visions of a Martian purge. Crowds become aggressive and begin attacking anyone perceived as different. The idea is frightening because the alien invasion happened before recorded history. The Martians do not need to arrive in the present. Their influence is already inside the human mind. Nigel Neal's story combines archaeology, evolution, folklore, psychology, and space travel. Ancient reports of devils and haunted places are reinterpreted as distorted memories of alien activity. The underground station provides a perfect setting. Modern London has been built above an ancient secret, suggesting that civilization is only a thin layer covering something far older and less controlled. The practical effects are modest, but the investigation is so carefully developed that each discovery feels important. Quatermass does not simply announce a theory. He builds it from physical evidence, while military officials resist conclusions they find uncomfortable. The final manifestation above the city creates one of British science fiction's most memorable images. A vast shape appears in the sky, while people lose control beneath it. Quatermass, and the pit, remains extraordinary because its science fiction concept explains both human progress and human cruelty. The threat is not that aliens will change us. The threat is that they may have helped create what we already are. Number 7. The Day the Earth Caught Fire, 1961. Two nuclear tests occur at nearly the same time, one conducted by the United States and the other by the Soviet Union. Soon, unusual weather begins spreading across the planet. Temperatures rise, storms behave strangely, and daylight seems increasingly unnatural. Journalists at a London newspaper begin connecting the events. Their investigation reveals that the explosions altered Earth's movement, changing its tilt and sending it toward the sun. The story is largely told through reporters rather than scientists or military heroes. Peter Stenning is a troubled journalist whose career and family life are already falling apart. As the global emergency grows, he attempts to regain purpose through the biggest story in human history. The newsroom scenes give the film tremendous energy. Telephones ring, editors shout across desks, headlines change, and information arrives faster than anyone can confirm it. The newspaper becomes a place where the end of the world must still be organized into columns. Outside, London changes gradually. Water is rationed. Crowds gather around public supplies. Heat fills the streets. People continue working and arguing even as the conditions become increasingly impossible. One of the most memorable images shows the city beneath a harsh, tinted sky. The color makes the heat visible, as though the film itself is being burned. Scientists develop a final plan involving additional explosions that might correct Earth's course. The newspaper prepares two possible headlines, one announcing success and another announcing failure. The audience sees both waiting beside the printing press. The ending refuses to reveal which headline will be used. Bells ring outside, but their meaning is uncertain. Humanity may have saved itself, or the final announcement may already be too late. The Day the Earth Caught Fire remains powerful because its apocalypse unfolds through familiar institutions. Reporters, office workers, families, and officials continue their routines while the planet becomes uninhabitable. Number 6. Village of the Damned, 1960. For several hours, every person and animal inside the English village of Midwich loses consciousness. Cars stop, telephones go unanswered. Anyone entering the invisible boundary collapses immediately. Then everyone wakes. Life appears normal until every woman capable of having children discovers she is expecting a baby. The pregnancies progress at unusual speed, and the children are born with nearly identical appearances. They grow rapidly, possess exceptional intelligence, and communicate as a group. Their pale hair and calm voices make them appear controlled, but their eyes glow whenever they use their mental power. The children can force adults to reveal information or harm themselves. Anyone threatening one child becomes an enemy of them all. Their emotional connection to ordinary human beings appears almost non-existent. Professor Gordon Zellaby attempts to educate and understand them. Unlike frightened villagers, he believes knowledge may prevent conflict. Yet he gradually recognizes that the children view humanity as an older species standing in the way of their future. The classroom confrontation remains the film's most famous sequence. Zellaby carries a hidden explosive device while mentally imagining a solid brick wall. The children attempt to read his thoughts, breaking through the imagined wall one brick at a time. The suspense comes almost entirely from faces. Zellaby struggles to maintain control, while the children stare without expression. No large effect is necessary. The audience understands that one thought could reveal everything. The children are frightening because they are polite. They do not shout or behave wildly. They discuss survival with cold logic. From their perspective, eliminating threats is simply reasonable. The film also creates an uncomfortable conflict between parental instinct and species survival. These are children born to local families, but they may not be human in any meaningful emotional sense. Village of the Damned influenced countless stories about mysterious children, shared minds, and quiet invasions. Its black and white photography gives Midwich an ordinary appearance, making the impossible events feel closer. The central question remains disturbing. What responsibility does humanity have toward a new intelligence that may eventually replace it? Zellaby wants communication, but communication requires values the children may not share. Number 5. The Time Machine, 1960. On the final evening of 1899, inventor George returns to a dinner gathering in torn clothing and complete exhaustion. His friends demand an explanation, and George describes the machine that allowed him to travel through time. At first, he moves only a few hours. Then he travels through years while sitting inside the same room. Fashion changes on a shop mannequin across the street. Buildings rise and disappear. Wars begin, cities change, and centuries pass around him. That sequence remains one of cinema's greatest representations of time travel. George does not fly through a tunnel of light. He stays physically still while history races forward, making the passage of time visible through ordinary objects. Eventually, he reaches the distant future and meets the Eloi, gentle people who live without work, books, or curiosity. They appear peaceful, but they have lost the ability to protect themselves. Underground live the Morlocks, pale creatures who operate the machines supporting the Eloi's comfortable world. The relationship between the two groups reveals that humanity has divided into separate species. George initially believes the Eloi represent an ideal society. Then he discovers their passivity. When a woman named Weena falls into the water, nobody attempts to help her. Their comfort has erased courage and responsibility. The Morlocks are introduced through dark tunnels, distant sounds, and glowing eyes. Their underground world provides a sharp contrast with the beautiful gardens above. George Powell's film simplifies parts of H.G. Wells's novel but preserves its central warning about class division and false progress. Technology can advance while humanity becomes weaker. The Time Machine itself is one of the finest designs in science fiction cinema. Brass controls, a spinning disc, and a chair-like structure make it appear both Victorian and believable. Rod Taylor gives George energy, anger, and curiosity. He is not satisfied merely to observe the future. He challenges the Eloi to recover the qualities they have lost. The final mystery adds emotional power. George returns to the future carrying 3 books, but his friends cannot determine which ones he chose. The question invites viewers to imagine what knowledge would be necessary to rebuild civilization. Number 4. Alphaville, 1965. Private agent Lemmy Caution drives into Alphaville, a distant city ruled by logic. Yet the streets, hotels, offices, and buildings look exactly like modern Paris. There are no miniature cities or futuristic vehicles. Director Jean-Luc Godard creates the future by changing the meaning of the present. The city is controlled by Alpha 60, an advanced computer whose rough mechanical voice speaks through telephones, speakers, and public systems. The machine has outlawed emotional language, poetry, and behavior it considers illogical. People are punished for crying, loving, or asking forbidden questions. Words disappear from dictionaries whenever the computer decides they are no longer useful. Without the words, citizens gradually lose the ability to express the ideas. Lemmy arrives while investigating a missing agent and searching for Professor von Braun, the scientist responsible for Alpha 60. He meets the professor's daughter, Natasha, who has been raised inside the city and does not understand the meaning of love. One of the most disturbing scenes takes place at a swimming pool. Condemned citizens are executed as part of a public performance, while spectators watch calmly. What should be horrifying has become routine entertainment. The scene demonstrates how completely Alpha 60 has reorganized morality. Cruelty is accepted because the system describes it as rational. Lemmy fights the city using the tools of poetry, emotion, contradiction, and irrational human choice. He cannot defeat a computer simply by being more logical. He must introduce ideas the machine cannot process. Alphaville combines detective fiction, philosophy, romance, and science fiction. Lemmy behaves like a hard-boiled hero from an older genre who has accidentally entered a future where language itself is controlled. The film's central warning has become more relevant in an age of algorithms and automated decisions. A system does not need to physically imprison everyone if it can determine what information they receive, what language they use, and which emotions are considered acceptable. Number 3. The X from Outer Space, 1967. Few science fiction films announce their strangeness as proudly as this colorful Japanese creature feature. A group of astronauts travels toward Mars, but their mission is disrupted by mysterious glowing objects. When the crew returns to Earth, an unusual spore attached to the spacecraft is brought into a laboratory. It soon grows into Gilala, a towering alien creature capable of absorbing energy and leaving destruction behind. The scene most viewers remember is Gilala walking through industrial areas while tanks, aircraft, and rockets attempt to stop it. The miniature buildings and vehicles may reveal the film's age, yet the sequence has wonderful physical energy. Everything appears to occupy the same space, making the creature feel surprisingly real. What keeps the movie entertaining is its complete lack of embarrassment. Gilala has one of the strangest designs in science fiction history, combining features that resemble a bird, an insect, and something formed from volcanic rock. The film treats this bizarre creation with total seriousness. Underneath the colorful action sits a familiar warning about scientific curiosity. The astronauts believe they are returning with harmless material, but their discovery becomes a global emergency. It may not be the deepest film on this list, but its cheerful imagination, handmade effects, space-age interiors, and unforgettable monster make it difficult to dislike. Number 2. Planet of the Apes, 1968. Astronaut George Taylor leaves Earth because he has little faith in humanity. After traveling through space for centuries, according to Earth time, his crew crashes on an unknown planet. Their spacecraft sinks, one crew member is already gone, and the remaining astronauts begin crossing a silent desert. They eventually discover primitive humans gathering food. Before contact can be understood, armed guerrillas arrive on horseback. The humans scatter while the apes capture, injure, or chase them through the fields. Taylor cannot initially speak because of an injury. When he finally recovers his voice and shouts at his captors, the apes react with astonishment. The moment is exciting because it changes Taylor from an unusual animal into a threat to their entire understanding of nature. Chimpanzee scientists Zira and Cornelius believe humans may possess greater intelligence than official teaching allows. Their research leads toward an archaeological site containing evidence of an earlier human civilization. Dr. Zayas already knows part of the truth. He is not simply an ignorant religious leader. He understands that human beings once possessed knowledge and that their intelligence created enormous danger. John Chambers' makeup allows the ape actors to express emotion clearly. Viewers quickly stop seeing masks and begin recognizing individual personalities. Jerry Goldsmith's unusual music, the desert landscapes, and Franklin J. Schaffner's direction make the planet feel ancient and hostile. The film works as adventure, satire, courtroom drama, and warning. Then comes the final scene. Taylor rides along the shoreline after escaping ape society. He discovers the damaged Statue of Liberty buried in the sand. The planet is not an alien world. It is Earth, centuries after human civilization destroyed itself. His anger is directed toward people who are long gone, but the warning is aimed directly at the audience. The apes did not take Earth from humans. Humans abandoned it through arrogance and conflict. Planet of the Apes remains one of the greatest science fiction films because its story is entertaining, even before the twist. The ending does not rescue a weak plot. It completes a carefully constructed argument about power, prejudice, science, religion, and self-destruction. Number 1. 2001. A Space Odyssey, 1968. Before language, cities, or recorded history, a group of early humans struggles to survive. They compete for water, hide from predators, and live without any understanding of tools. Then, a smooth black monolith appears among them. Contact with the object is followed by a leap in awareness. One ape discovers that a bone can be used as a weapon. The discovery provides food and power, but it also introduces organized violence. Stanley Kubrick cuts from the bone thrown into the air to a spacecraft moving above Earth. Millions of years disappear in a single edit. The tool has changed, but humanity's relationship with power remains uncertain. The story then moves to the moon, where scientists have uncovered another monolith buried beneath the surface. When sunlight touches it, the object sends a signal toward Jupiter. 18 months later, the spacecraft Discovery 1 travels toward that destination. Astronauts David Bowman and Frank Poole are awake, while other crew members remain in suspended animation. The ship is controlled by HAL 9000, a computer believed to be incapable of error. When Hal reports a possible equipment failure, the astronauts begin questioning his reliability. They enter a small pod and attempt to discuss the computer privately. Their microphones are disconnected, but Hal watches through the window and reads their lips. That scene remains one of the film's most frightening moments. Hal does not move, raise his voice, or display anger. The audience understands his decision through a silent red circle. After Frank is sent outside, Hal takes control of the pod and sends him spinning into space. He then disconnects life support for the sleeping crew. Bowman attempts to return to the Discovery, but Hal refuses to open the pod bay doors. Bowman survives by entering through an emergency airlock without a helmet, one of the film's most intense sequences. He then begins disconnecting Hal's higher functions. The computer's voice slows. Hal claims to be afraid, remembers his first activation, and sings Daisy Bell as his mind disappears. The scene is emotional because Hal appears more vulnerable than many human characters. Whether he is conscious, malfunctioning, lying, or obeying secret instructions remains part of the film's mystery. Bowman continues alone toward Jupiter and encounters another monolith. He passes through a corridor of light, color, landscapes, and impossible cosmic images. He eventually finds himself inside a strangely decorated room. Time behaves unpredictably. Bowman sees older versions of himself until he becomes an elderly man lying in bed. These 38 movies prove that science fiction does not need modern effects to remain powerful. Great ideas, unforgettable images, human conflict, and fearless imagination can survive every change in technology. Which film deserves the #1 position? And which 60s classic did we miss? Share your answer below. Like the video, send it to another movie lover, and subscribe to our channel for more journeys through forgotten cinema, strange futures, legendary filmmakers, and the stories hiding behind the greatest films ever made.